The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, Margaritaville, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes celebrate their 200th episode with a review of Call to Adventure from Brotherwise Games. Then the Dukes look back at Gaia Project in their Dukes Double Take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex. I thought about doing that for holding that for like 200 seconds, seeing how that would work, for episode 200.
Yeah, no, I think that was a good choice not to do that because I wouldn't have known you were doing that had you not said that, and then I just would have cut it out as dead air time. So this was a good call, Alex. I appreciate you not doing that.
Sean, let's over the course of this episode make 200 wishes.
So I'm going to do something. I have a 200 countdown built in.
Oh, okay.
Where throughout the episode, we're just going to insert 200 and then 199. But it's all going to make sense. So I played 198 games of Magic yesterday. First mention.
Oh, okay. Dang it.
I win.
That was fast on the draw.
I know. Oh, I was ready for it. You forgot. I'm sure you forgot.
Yeah, I definitely forgot. It's been 2 weeks. If we were doing this weekly, I would have remembered. Yeah.
Well, anyway, this is, Alex, episode 200. Think about that for one quick second, one hot second, Alex. 200 episodes of the Dukes of Dice. Do
you know what that means in terms of days of your life that you won't ever get back that you spent recording this episode and then later editing it?
Yeah, I was going to say, the editing, let's figure this out here. On average, I would say 5 hours in edit. Oh my God. What is that?
That's a lot. I mean, that would be 1,000 hours in editing alone if that number is accurate.
Wait, yes, that's
5
right.
5 hours in edit times 200.
Yeah, I can totally do basic math. Wait, what's 200 times 5 is 1,000?
Yeah, that's what I just said repeatedly.
I've been in court all day. It's been a long day. I have spent then 41 days editing the podcast.
That's a whole month of your life, Sean.
I know. Think of all of the time I could be playing with Chewy. And that doesn't even count some of the crazy edits. Like when you were gone, there was the Boards Alive edit that, because of technical difficulties, was a 19-hour edit.
Yeah.
That was very, very brutal. But yeah, so we made a decision not to do anything great or grand in celebration.
Now, wait, when you say decision implies that there was a possibility that we actually would have done something big and grand and celebratory.
I'm saying I made no commitment to take any effort. Alex, did you make any commitment to take some effort to celebrate?
I did not.
Okay. And because here's the thing. Typically what we do is it's our year anniversaries that are the things that we celebrate. I think we lined it up so the episode 100 was going to be the Duke-iversary or something. I don't know. So it's awesome. It's totally cool. We're not doing anything crazy. And one of the reasons we're not doing anything crazy is yesterday is technically my 1-year law firm anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 1 year since I took over the law firm.
Yeah.
So that might have some reason why.
I have now been consistently telling anyone trying to get a hold of you for podcast purposes that it is a fool's errand and they should not attempt such a thing.
Yeah. Because I used to be able to spend some time during the day, dealing with board game, social media, podcasting stuff, whatever. And I just can't do that anymore as much or at all.
No, at all. It's not as much. It's come on.
Because I have 2 jobs, right? It's crazy. Running a business is a lot of work on top of all of the legal stuff I have to do.
I like how we're squeezing in a State of the Duchy here right at the top, by the way.
This is not a State of the Duchy. We do States of the Duchy at the Duke-iversaries.
This is a Duchy status report.
It's yeah, sure, why not?
It's your quarterly check-in with Sean.
Yeah, something like that. But this is episode 200. We're kind of went a little out of order there, but episode 200, which we are calling Many Runes, Many Moons. And that title, thanks to the name father himself, Steve O'Rourke. We're going to talk about casting runes in a call to adventure. And of course, 200 episodes, that's a lot of moons representing nights.
And in fact, we determined one whole month.
So really one moon? Like one moon, 1 1/3 moon cycle?
On the edit, I mean, don't forget to add in the actual record time.
Right.
Which is another 400 hours.
Oof. Yeah, that's a lot. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we get all of our help naming the episodes from our amazing board game guild number 2008. And at the end of the episode, we'll give you the rest of the runners up. Well, Alex, how are you doing?
I'm fine. So after I came back from Peru, I got sick. Then I got Abby sick. Then I got a couple people at work sick.
Wow.
And
jerk.
I mean, well, and let me be clear. Sorry. Allegedly got people sick. I happened to be sick. Then they happened to get sick with the exact same symptoms shortly thereafter. But there's no actual evidence that I got them sick.
Were you that person spreading around the measles?
I was not. I am not. I have my vaccines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. It's been fine. It's been rainy spring weather here in St. Louis. Pretty nice. I'm about to travel after we record this to my first gaming convention of the year, Proto ATL in Atlanta, Georgia. Or technically, I think it's Sewanee, Georgia, but it's a suburb of Atlanta. So checking out a lot of prototypes, doing a lot of funky, fun stuff. I don't know. That's about what's going on with me. What's going on with you, other than being a busy lawyer?
Busy lawyer. No, that's about it. I'm playing a bunch of Magic, but that's not anything new.
You already got your first mention in, all right? You don't have to talk about it again. We get it. You play Magic. All right, hey, Sean, let's talk recent plays. You want to talk about Magic?
Sure, why not? Again, just super brief.
Yeah.
The new set came out, War of the Spark, which is just a Planeswalker crazy set. I have played like 8 or 9 sealed decks on Magic Arena, and it's been bonkers. I did 1 draft so far. I'll be doing some more drafts. It is a bonkers format. It is like crazy board states. It's been really good. Also, I went the night after we recorded episode 199. I went to Active Imagination, Alex.
Whoa! That's a throwback.
Yeah, for Friday Night Magic, because I wanted to play some Commander. And Commander is my favorite format of Magic. It's 100 cards. Only 1 copy of each card is allowed, unless it's basic land, and you have a commander, and there's some other funky rules. I've talked about it before. But it's for a long time, it's been my favorite format. And back when I was playing Commander regularly, we had a Wednesday night group. This was before the Dukes. We had a Wednesday night group, and I was a fairly dominant Commander player in that group that we had. And this was when Commander was kind of gaining some traction and some popularity. And I was pretty dominant, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. And I would often kind of hold back so as to make sure everyone had a fun gaming experience. Times when I could go infinite, I wouldn't go infinite, just so that everyone could have fun, whatever. So that's like 5-6 years ago. Things are quite a bit different now, Alex. Like, Commander is much more widespread. Now on Friday Night Magic, there were like 20 people there just for Commander. Maybe not 20, like 15. And some pretty crazy competitive players. There were like younger, like high schoolers and stuff that had like budget decks, but then there were some like 20-somethings with these crazy decks. And I was just like, oh yeah, wow, I am not a dominant player anymore. So that was interesting. It was certainly interesting, and I'm scared to go back. I have updated the decks, though. I did buy a bunch of cards from the last 5 years to kind of update some of the decks. So
it seems like now that you've gotten more into Magic, that place makes more sense for you to go to, because Empire Board Game Library is not a Magic store, at least when I was there.
No, and for the most part, I don't think that I'll be going that often. I mean, I'm thinking I'll probably make it there once a month, maybe once every 6 weeks for Commander. Typically Friday nights are date night, the Ducal date night. So that's not typically going to be the case. But anyway, as far as non-Magic related games, Alex, are you familiar with Escape Plan from Vital Lacerda?
I have heard of it, and I've heard it would be one that I might enjoy because it's on the later end of Lacerda.
Yeah, it really is. So I got to play it last night. Our buddy Matt had a copy, and he's been bringing it for a couple weeks. And finally, we said, okay, let's do it. So it is a really weird game because in some ways it's like, yeah, this totally has Vital Lacerda's design blueprints or fingerprints, whatever, all over it. But at the same time, it's like, this is not a typical Vital Lacerda game. So in Escape Plan. Yeah. In Escape Plan, you are a heist, robber, master thief, whatever, and you're trying to escape the city over 3 days. What you're doing is you're kind of going around the town to different businesses, to different safe houses to kind of collect money and collect loot that you've stashed, I guess, and then get out through one of the 3 escape routes by the end of the 3rd day. And whoever has the most money at the end of the game is going to be the winner. Now, each day you have 3 actions, and you're able to potentially get some extra actions, but it's going to cost money or some abilities, whatever. Now, the way the board is set up, by the way, there's no point tracker because there's no points in this game, sort of. It's just collecting money. But the way the board is set up is there are these cool hexes, these city hexes that have different types of terrain on them. There's like park and like industrial and buildings and water. And so the board sets up with a couple hexes in place, and then each round, the players are adding another 4 hexes to the map. So by the end, you've placed an additional 12 hexes. And they're set up in such a way that you're not necessarily going to reveal all of the exits early on. I think the last exit might get revealed in the last round. I'm not sure if it works that way specifically or not, but that's how it worked in our game. And what you need to do is you need to move you have a figure representing yourself, and you move it from one matching section. So like on my tile, if there's a park, and if it's adjacent to another tile that's a park, that's all considered one space. So you could potentially like move like all the way across the board if you've all managed to set up this contiguous park section, which is kind of weird. And then go to the different businesses to get various things. But the catch is that there are 3 different color police. There's red, black, and blue police, and they are located on some of the tiles. And if you leave them and don't have a way to deal with the police, then you're going to get wounded, and getting wounded is bad because a certain level you're going to get arrested and handcuffed, and it's bad news, and it's going to really hinder you. So that's sort of something you have to deal with. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to visit these different businesses because you each have a different escape plan. And so it's a little card that's secret just to you, and it's saying, look, if you go to the discotheque, it's going to be worth $100 at the end of the game. But if you go to the restaurant, it's only worth $60 to you at the end of the game. And so you want to go to the places that give you obviously the most money. Some places will give you immediate income that you're going to be able to use to spend things. You can go to these other businesses. There's like a convenience store where you can get equipment which is going to help you avoid the police. Also, there are lockers, which are like, because apparently you've stashed money in the lockers. Then you can go to safe houses, which are going to decrease your notoriety, whereas going to a place like the hospital will increase your notoriety because they're looking for people coming in with gunshot wounds, right? And then the notoriety is something that gets tracked at the end of every round, and the more notoriety you have, the more bonuses you get, but also players with less notoriety than you can move police towards you. So it's really interesting. There's quite a lot going on. In a lot of ways, it doesn't feel like a Euro. And in a lot of ways, it doesn't even feel like a hybrid. It's probably more hybrid than not. I mean, it's definitely not a pure Ameritrash game by any sense, but it's like Vital Lacerda's take on an Ameritrash game, if that makes sense.
That's not a bad thing in my book.
No. It's not a bad thing. I don't mean to imply that it's a bad thing. It's just really different. And it kind of took me a while to wrap my head around it in the sense of, this is a weird game. Like, this is very different. So I would definitely play it again. I think it's something that Raquel would really like, because she's a big Vital Lacerda fan. And it definitely has, like I said, those design fingerprints of his on it. I liked it. I killed at it. I doubled the score. I had like $500 at the end. Everyone else had like $250. So it kind of made a certain amount of sense, but it was a weird experience. It was good. I enjoyed it. If I were to own it, I think that would be only if Raquel was crazy about it. Like if she was like, "Oh my God, this game's awesome." I don't, other than that, don't have a big drive to go purchase it. I'm glad that Matt has it, and I'm certainly willing to play it a couple more times for sure.
I'd like to try this one.
Yeah, I think you would really like it. But then again, maybe I'm not the best judge of that, as our review game may or may not suggest.
You don't know. You don't know me.
A little bit.
I'm surprised you remember what my face looks like. It's been that long since you've seen me in person.
But I see you.
No, don't tell him about the webcam.
Google Hangouts, so.
No, don't tell him about that. Dang it, Sean. You ruined the illusion.
Anyway, that is Escape Plan from Eagle Griffin and Vital Lacerda. I definitely say check it out.
I was going to get you to try and describe my face from memory and see how close you got.
Think of, let's say that you were able to blend.
This is going to be insulting.
A potato and an onion.
Uh-huh.
With a little bit of peach fuzz on its upper lip.
I did shave this morning, so there's not so much peach fuzz right now.
And then you put it in a suit that looks like it's wearing its dad's suit.
I have not worn a suit in a very long time.
Oh, lucky
sir.
you. Lucky you.
Gray Fox. No, I said it. No. Monochromatic Wolf has a very lax dress code.
Yeah, that was my favorite thing when you were anchoring the weekend shifts at KRQE. Was your was he the weather buddy?
Oh yeah, Chris Gilson,
the weather guy. He's
Chris Gilson.
He's like a wee guy, and he looks like you both just look super young. And it was like the anchor's kids took over the studio.
He's currently working in Orlando. Last I heard.
All right,
he's moved on.
We'll have him come out to Dice Tower Con.
I might try and bump into him at that time. You never know. we can compare old stories about looking way too young.
Yeah. There you go.
Someone posted at that time, took a picture of the two of us bantering at the desk, and put it on Twitter with the caption "Revenge of the Nerds." So.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't Sean, by the way.
No, it wasn't me. No.
It was someone else. I think it was a local radio host in Albuquerque. Anyway. Well, Sean, before I talk about the one main new play I got in, I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of smaller, interesting, weird little plays that came up over the course of these past couple weeks. First one I'm going to talk about is Baseball Highlights 2045. My first mention, not Sean's nonsense at the start of the episode. I am in a league. I'm in an online league because, hey, guess what? The Baseball Highlights app has an online play function. So I have played game one in the league. It was against Mike Fitzgerald. He definitely out-revenued me and ended up winning in a close series, but a 6-game series nonetheless. So I'm 0-1 to start my regular season there, but that's been fun to get started. The other ones I'm going to talk about, though, are things that came up at various game nights. So one was over at Josh, my Monochromatic Wolf friend's house, at a poker tournament. When people got eliminated from said poker tournament, and by the way, Sean, I won in the last game of said poker tournament.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Now, not through any degree of skill. In fact, at that time, I had the most obvious tell, where literally my face looked like I'd swallowed a lemon after I looked at a pair of cards and then immediately folded.
Good job.
Yeah. But I still ended up winning somehow. But I learned a game at that. Have you heard? So, Sean, you're familiar with the classic game, Guess Who? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of subjective Guess Who?
No.
The rules are identical to Guess Who, except for one key factor. The questions you ask in order to eliminate people are things like, does your person watch Game of Thrones? Or does this person have a common Starbucks order that they'll always get? And you're going to eliminate people based off of that.
Okay.
I played this for the first time with some of Abby's friends. And what was crazy was, despite the very subjective nature of these questions, we both eliminated down to the right one person at the end of it. It was like some sort of weird magic trick. So anyway, if you have an old copy of Guess Who, try out Subjective Guess Who. And then the one other thing I'll mention kind of in this weird little grab bag, Sean, I know you've played Werewords because we've played Werewords together. Have you played two-player Werewords?
I have not played two-player Werewords.
Have you heard of how that variant works?
No, I don't think so.
So in Werewords, it's a sort of a version of Werewolf meets 20 questions, where there's going to be the mayor who has access to a secret word. The mayor is then going to answer yes or no questions. They can lie because they might be a traitor. They might be a secret mayor wolf. But they might also be thrown off by one of the players guessing who is actually a werewolf. The werewolf knows what the word is. There's a seer who might know what the word is. It's effectively like Werewolf, but with 20 questions. Literally, you make that combination. That's the game. I had never heard of a two-player social deduction game. Now, I've played a three-player social deduction game, Win, Lose, Banana, released by Asmodi Games. That's a three-player social deduction game. Two-player, I have not heard of. And I got to tell you, Sean, I was stunned to find out it actually works. So, two-player Werewords, you take 3 roles. In addition, obviously, you have the mayor. One person's going to be the mayor. One person's going to be asking the questions. The roles you have are, of course, villager, seer, and werewolf. And you just pick up 2 of those roles. And so either the mayor is being Mayor Wolf and betraying you, or you are a seer. I mean, it works the same way as typical Werewords, but at the end of the round, you just point at who you think it is, and if you correctly point it at the right, if you're the werewolf and you point it at the seer, if you are not the werewolf and point it at the werewolf, congratulations, you win. And I don't know how it works so well, but it actually works really well as a two-player game.
Interesting.
Yeah. So give that one a try sometimes. If you have a copy of Werewords, even if you have a first edition copy, I think you can still play with this, even though the app isn't really set up for it. If you switch it within the app, you can get those two-player rules. And I had fun with it, Sean. I was surprised, but it was a good amount of fun. So that's two-player Werewords, a twist on Werewords that, hey, maybe you should give it a try.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this next game I'm going to talk about, I'm super confused, Alex, because I feel like I should have talked about this game months ago, and I can't find any record that I have. It's Forum Trajanum, which is a newer Stefan Feld game, and it's just bonkers to me because it's been, we keep our show notes, like we copy paste them from one episode to the next, and I always have like save for future weeks at the bottom, like if there's a game that I played but didn't talk about, so I know that I can talk about it in the future. And it's been on that for like 6 episodes now. And I cannot find any record that I've already talked about it in recent plays, and it's bonkers to me that I wouldn't have done that. So if I'm just completely mistaken and can't figure it out, I apologize for repeating this, but I don't think I have.
You just got to keep it brief, Sean. Yay or nay? What score would it get?
A big yay. Forum Trajanum is a big yay. This was something that I played twice already soon after we had played Carpe Diem and reviewed Carpe Diem, which I was not a fan of. It was way too light of a game, and I got nothing out of it for me. Forum Trajanum is not that. It is, it's nothing to do with Trajan, which is one of my favorite Stefan Feld games, other than somewhat linked in terms of theme, but really they have no connection other than that. Everyone has their own player board where they're using their what were they called? They were called like their colonists, I think. And you're going to be collecting colonists and placing them on or pulling them off your board to clear spots for you to build certain things. But then you're also going to be using them to go into this sort of centralized board where you're building up these different areas for the emperor. And it's a really interesting mechanic. Basically, at the start of a round, you flip over 2 street cards. So there are different symbols that are the streets for the columns, and then the streets for the rows. And you're going to pull 2 of your colonists or citizen tiles, but one has to be, or they have to be from one of those rows and or columns. And you can pick 2 from a row or 2 from a column, doesn't matter. It just gives you the different options. And from those, you're going to look at them, and on the back, they're going to reveal some abilities. Like they may give you certain types of resources, or may give you some sort of ongoing ability, and you need to pick one that you're going to keep, and then you're going to pass the other to your right. And then from the one you get from the player on your left, of those 2, you're going to choose which one you're going to execute. And there are some times when you can potentially execute both through certain actions. So you're going to get whatever resources or get whatever ability based off the one that you choose. And certain resources, they're actually workers, but it's not worker placement. But they're different colored workers representing different types of artisans or whatever. And based on that, you're going to be able to create some sort of building. And it's either going to be a color building in the center, or you're going to build one of the gray buildings, which can give you some sort of bump on a track. Because it's a Feld game, so of course it has no shortage of tracks for you to move up on. Envoy, they're called envoys. That's what they're called. Yeah. Anyway, so you're going to do that, and then at the end of a round, there's this round scoring, and it's going to be based on how many contiguous pieces you have around certain areas in the shared board. Also, there's certain requirements on your personal board for having certain types of buildings arranged in certain ways. It just depends. It's a random draw of these different objectives. It was really good. I really liked this quite a bit. This was definitely more my speed of a Feld game than Carpe Diem was. I think you'd like it well enough, but I don't think you'd be crazy about it necessarily.
Okay.
It's not as heavy as your Bora Bora or regular Trajan, and it's probably a little bit heavier than, say, Castles of Burgundy, to kind of give it some context there. But I really liked it. Raquel really liked it. Both of us were not fans of Carpe Diem, so this was a nice little Carpe Diem palate cleanser. Feldit cleanser.
All right. Speaking of weird punny jokes, when you said street card, I wanted to jump in there and ask if any of those were named Desire.
Or Stella?
No. Come on.
Yeah, Stella. Isn't Stella from Streetcar Named Desire?
Look.
I mean, if it's going to be named, okay. Anyway, that's Forum Trajanum, which, you should check it out.
You went one level too deep with that joke, Sean. Just one level too deep.
Maybe not for all the theater majors out there.
Okay. The last game I'll talk about is an Alan Moon game from Rio Grande Games from the year, Sean, 2000. The year 2000. Time Pirates. Time Pirates is the name of this game. Have you heard of this game, Sean?
I think I have.
Have you played this game?
No, I have not.
Okay. Sean, do you have your computer handy?
Yeah, I'm looking this thing up right now.
I need you to take a second to look up the cover of this game. Just the cover.
Oh my God! Where have I seen this game? Oh, where have I seen this game?
Look.
Oh, where have I seen this game?
So, Sean, in the year 2000, I think this cover would have been perfectly acceptable.
Totally rad.
Within the hobby. Oh man, does it look dated in a hilarious way now. Oh man, does it look dated. It's Time Pirates. The I in time has a little scientist Adam, and the I in Pirates has a little pirate flag. So here's the premise of this game, Sean. You are a time-traveling pirate going through different eras of history, trying to steal valuable artifacts in sets that you'll then trade in at the market for points, eventually. On your turn, you have 2 actions. You can either use those actions to sell stuff, you can use them to pick up stuff, or move along the time rifts between different eras. Keep in mind, though, that you are not able to steal from the past or future with impunity, because there is a time cop who roves around the board, this giant time cop pawn. And how the time cop pawn is going to move is at the start of your turn, you can choose to pick one space on the board where there is no other player and have that space refill from the back. Some of those tiles are the tiles you're trying to collect as part of sets. Some of those tiles are the time cop moves tile. If it's a 1, he'll move down the 1 path. If it's a 2, he'll move down the 2 path. If you start your turn in the same space as the time cop, you lose some of your tiles, your stolen loot that you've collected throughout history. So, Sean, this game, I don't know if I'd describe it as good, but I was delighted by it. It's a set collection game where you're scoring points. There's 3 different eras of scoring. The game itself is fairly basic. BGG hates this game, not surprisingly. It's averaging a 5.7 on BGG. But come on, Sean. Anytime you can send the time cop or worry about the time cop coming to get your booty, it's a good game. It's just got to be a good game, just off of that basis alone.
Does the time cop have a little picture of JCVD on it?
No, it is a normal black pawn.
Oh.
There's not much special in the components about this game or the art. It looks very much dated. I should mention that by the way, the pirate on the cover of this box, as Sean has seen, is a pirate armed with 2 pistols, but is wearing blue jeans and a tucked-in pirate shirt and some nice loafers.
Pirates do not tuck.
It's the most ridiculous pirate you've ever seen.
By the way, do you know what the JCVD reference is?
No, absolutely. Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah, okay, took me a second. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie.
At first, it seemed like you were just kind of moving past it, like, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And I'm like, I don't think you do.
I didn't, but then I figured it out.
Good job, Alex.
Thanks. So anyway, that's Time Pirates. This might be an insta-buy, not because the game is any good, but just because it's inherently ridiculous. And I think if you're a gamer who appreciates the cheesy, weird, and obscure, hey, a reference to Flip the Table, a show I loved, if that's the kind of game you love, seek out Time Pirates. If you are even remotely a Sean S. gamer or cannot stand cheesy things, steer clear of Time Pirates. It's not a
cheesy
great
things.
game. Then, okay.
I watched Mystery Science Theater 3000.
All right.
Get out of here.
All right, sorry. Anyway, that's Time Pirates, and that is what we've played. Let's head on over to the news. All right, Sean. First up in news was a situation that was unfolding as we were recording our most recent episode. And it's a situation that still is not totally resolved, but at least as of the recording, some of the dust has kind of settled on it. And it has to do with some Kickstarter craziness involving Kolossal games and Maple games. Kolossal, for folks who don't know, probably best known for Western Legends. That would be their big hit title, the game that made an appearance on South Park. Kolossal likes running Kickstarter campaigns. They have run a good chunk of them. They run them both through their main account and then a separate account called Kolossal Micro. Now, what folks aren't necessarily aware of is the same person behind Kolossal is also behind Maple Games. This was a publisher started up by Daryl Andrews, a designer who, full disclosure, Monochromatic Wolf has worked with on a couple of games, City of Gears and Creatures and Cupcakes. So an existing relationship with him, just as a heads up for that. But those two companies, kind of under one funding source, Kickstarter stepped in and laid down the law. So there was a game called Hunt the Ravager, which had just launched on Kolossal's micro account. That got suspended fairly soon after launch. At about the same time, Folding Space, another Alan Moon game that was being put out by Maple Games, that was suspended. And then after the campaign ended, Papillon, which, full disclosure, designed by another designer that Monochromatic Wolf has worked with. It's kind of unavoidable in the industry to have some of these kind of ties, but that campaign was suspended after it had already ended. Now, how was Kickstarter able to do that? Well, for folks who don't know exactly how that system works, Kickstarter, for the 2 weeks after a campaign has ended, has a window in which they have not transferred funds yet. The funds they're collecting funds from backers, but they haven't actually transferred the money over. After that 2 week period is over, they transfer funding over done deal. Well, what Kickstarter did is they stepped into a completed campaign and said, nope, everyone gets their money back. We're suspending this. And this was done as a result of what's known as the Trust and Safety Team stepping in. And Kickstarter has not publicly stated, and will not, in all likelihood, state why they jumped in and suspended this. However, it should be noted that there are situations where Kickstarter will step in when I've had personal experience with this with Monochromatic Wolf, where they will ask you about past campaigns that you have yet to fulfill. And certainly because of Kolossal's propensity for running Kickstarter campaigns, they had a number of campaigns that were unfilled, as did Maple. Not an unusual practice in the hobby, except for maybe the volume and the fact that it was spread over 3 accounts. It seems like Kickstarter was maybe not so pleased. One thing you are not allowed to do is have 2 Kickstarters running at the same time. It's possible, again, speculating, it's possible that Kickstarter was maybe not so stoked about that. And then amidst all this chaos, Daryl Andrews was forced out as president of Maple Games at the same time as all of this craziness was going on, related or unrelated. But it was an interesting period, and one that I'll speak to from a creator's perspective, certainly caught our attention. Had our attention very much so, because Kickstarter, it's not always clear when they're going to step in and enforce certain rules. It's not always clear what they're looking for when they make these decisions, what's going to trigger these kind of reviews, and what's going to trigger these kind of suspensions. So obviously knowing what's going to happen there, I can tell you there have already been internal discussions with us about slowing down the pace of our own campaigns as a result of some fear that Kickstarter may step in and be not so stoked. I mean, if you think about this from, say, Kolossal or Maple's perspective, Sean, they have invested a serious amount of money into marketing, whether that be paying for BGG ads or BGG contests or marketing on Facebook, or even just the costs in putting the page together, getting the graphics done, getting that page assembled, the hours and hours it takes to do that, plus the community management, all of that time and energy. And in the case of, say, Papillon, which went through the full campaign, that's all thrown out the window. Oh, and I didn't mention the cost of, say, Kickstarter preview videos, which having commissioned some of those, that's not an insignificant cost either. So, Sean, were you aware of much of this as this was going on? I know we kind of briefly talked about it when we were recording last episode.
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, I think this is very, very inside baseball.
Oh, I see how it is.
No. I'm not saying that in a bad way. In certain things, I like, inside baseball stuff. Most notably not in baseball, though. I don't know. I feel like maybe if I were kickstarting stuff with a lot more regularity like I had been in the past, maybe I would have been paying more attention to this. But it's not something I've been focusing on. So
the main statement from Kolossal has been along the lines of they have met with Kickstarter. They believe the suspensions were as a result of technical issues, and they anticipate having more news soon. Haven't seen what that news is. Don't know what the future of any of those 3 games will be, and whether they will be on Kickstarter or whether this will switch them to a direct-to-retail. Who knows? That part of this is up in the air, but this was something that occurred, and I will tell you as an industry person, caught my eye, inside baseball or not. So
no, that's fair. That's totally fair.
So there you go. That's that Kickstarter conundrum craziness, what you call it. Maybe we'll see more details about that. And hey, we'll put an update here or not, depending on how annoyed Sean is about all this inside baseball stuff.
No, I'm not annoyed by it. That's not necessarily a pejorative. Sometimes people want inside baseball, and they're coming to you, Alex, an industry insider.
Industry insider, Alex Goldsmith.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Anyway, that's going on with that. And I've heard some other things, but none that I'll share here. So anyway, hey, Sean, let's talk about other news. The Mensa Select Awards were released, and 5 games took home the honors. What were those games, Sean?
Yeah, so they do this every year, and it's not that there's one winner or there's even categories. They're just saying, hey, these 4 or 5 games are pretty awesome, and if you're a super genius that belongs in Mensa, then you should totally play these games. I think that's exactly what their press release says. So Architects of the West Kingdom from Grande.and, which we've reviewed here. Interesting little worker placement game where placing the workers in groups together makes it more powerful, and there's interesting game. Gizmos, which Alex and I will never play again, even though we both liked it quite a bit.
Killed by Wingspan.
Yeah, Killed by Wingspan, designed by Phil Walker Harding, released by CMON. It's a great engine building game that Wingspan just supplanted. In a world where Wingspan didn't exist, I would say go check out Gizmos. Instead, I'll say go check out Wingspan. Also from Renegade, Gun Kimono, designed by Jeffrey D. Allers. It's a reimagination of a 2009 game called Heartland, and it was reimagined to take place in feudal Japan. I don't know a whole lot about it. I think it's kind of an abstract game. Do you know?
I played it.
Oh, have you?
I played it and talked about it on the show.
Oh, all right. Well,
come on, man. Who's not listening now? Huh?
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this game I have never heard of. It's just called Planet by Blue Orange Games, but it sounds really interesting. It's a tile-laying city building game on a grand scale, and you're placing magnetic terrain tiles on a 3-dimensional planet, creating areas of ocean, desert, forest, etc. That sounds really cool, and I like Blue Orange's production value. It's probably on the lighter end, but I'd certainly be interested in giving that a try. It's designed by Erdis Sulenskus, I believe. And then also from CMON is Victoria Masterminds, designed by Antoine Bauza and Eric Lang. And this is a steampunk worker placement game where you are taking on the role of a supervillain. I really want to play this game. I something I'm really interested in. I think it looks really cool. And of course, it's got the CMON goodness. Those are all interesting titles. Of the 2 I've played, so you've played 3 of these, Alex.
I have played 3, and I saw Planet in person and thought it looked really cool. And I intend to play that at maybe if it's around at Geekway, I'll give it a try at Geekway.
Okay, all right. So those are the 2019 Mensa Select award winners.
Very cool. All right, last one we'll talk about quickly is a Kickstarter currently live, Cleopatra and the Society of Architects.
Yeah.
This is a reprint of a game that Days of Wonder had. They released it in 2006. It has been picked up by a company called Mojito Studios. It's their first Kickstarter that they've run. This is a Bruno Cathala and Ludovic Malblanc game. And man, oh man, it looks gorgeous. It looks ambitious, very ambitious in terms of the components. You get these massive columns and really nice graphic design and giant newbie figures and obelisks and Cleopatras. It looks, from a table presence perspective, like it could be pretty nuts if they pull this off. Oh, also, there's cardboard pyramids a la Camel Up, not Camel Cup, which I almost accidentally said just now. So, Sean, had you heard of this game or ever played this game? Okay.
Yeah, no, this had always been on my radar. It's something I wanted to try because, Days of Wonder, they do one big production a year. And even the old version had a pretty incredible table presence with the obelisks and the temple and things like that. So, yeah, this was something that was kind of on my radar. Like, if I ever saw it at a flea market or whatever, I probably would have tried to snatch it up. So I'm excited to hear that it's coming out again on Kickstarter.
If you would like to get a pledge for this game, the pledges are running for $70 with shipping, not with shipping, plus shipping for a deluxe set, and retail set, and about $100 for a premium set, which sounds expensive, but boy, oh boy, if they pull off the kind of component quality that they're going for, I kind of get it, for sure. So this version has updated rules, has new graphics, also has a deluxe edition associated. As of the time of this recording, it is sitting right about $84,000. With 24 days left, it is almost doubled its funding goal, set to wrap up May 27th. So you still have some time to pledge for this one if it sounds to be of interest. If you like Bruno Cathala games, which from time to time, I tend to enjoy a couple of his games. So yeah, that is Cleopatra. Sean, are you going to pledge for this?
No, I'm not going to pledge for it. And in a different world, I may have.
I should mention, too, that there are a couple of expansions included with this that are compatible with the first edition copy of the game, an expansion, Cult of Sobek, and The Whims of Cleopatra. And the pledge for that is $25 plus shipping.
I'll say that's pretty cool, because usually they wouldn't necessarily be compatible with an older version of the game. So,
yeah,
especially a game that's been out of print for quite a long time.
Well, and I'll tell you, as someone who has had that issue come up with some of their Kickstarters, it can be an absolute pain in the neck to make that happen.
Yeah.
An absolute pain in the neck. So good on them for making that happen and taking care of first edition folks.
That's really cool.
Well, that's Cleopatra on Kickstarter through the next few weeks. And that is a look at the news. So, Sean, I like recording the podcast with you, but man, it doesn't feel right if I'm not doing it at a proper table. Right now I'm sitting at this dinky square kitchen table. It's kind of cramped. I don't feel like if I needed to roll dice, they just kind of clank around and it just wouldn't be a satisfying experience. So I feel like I could use an upgrade.
Oh, well, perhaps a game topper from our good buddy Berkey would be the right solution to your particular problem, Alex.
Is that right? Well, good thing I actually already have one of those fine things.
Oh, perfect.
And really enjoy using it.
So is this a solution to a problem that you no longer have?
When I move in with my girlfriend Abby, it will be a problem I will no longer have because I'll bring this game topper over here and then I'll have that ready to go either when I'm podcasting or chucking some dice or playing games or whatever else. It can convert the benign kitchen table into a fun gaming experience at a nice, affordable price. And if you order now, every single game topper comes with 5 pounds of Berkey jerky.
Ooh, does it really?
No, I actually don't think that's a deal.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't say that.
Would make me more likely to buy a second one, because that jerky, I can't get enough of that jerky in my life.
Mwah! That's all I have to say about Berkey's jerky.
Also, mwah! That's what I have to say about his game toppers. Berkey, you are a mwah kind of guy.
Be sure to check out Game Toppers over at GameToppersLLC.com. So, Alex, do you recall playing the multiplayer worker placement game Yokohama by our fine sponsors over at Tasty Minstrel Games?
Boy, it was so long ago, and yeah, of course I remember. It was an awesome game, Sean. An amazing game.
Yeah, we both enjoyed it quite a bit. So I was excited to hear that Yokohama Duel, which is all the rage nowadays, take an awesome game and then put Duel on it, and now you've got a sweet 2-player game. And I think that's what's going to happen here, don't you?
Oh yeah, no, this looks great.
So this will be coming to Kickstarter in late January of this year, so keep your eyes out for that. Yokohama Duel is a 2-player worker placement game that lasts 4 rounds, with each player taking 4 turns each round. The game includes 10 different areas, and each area can be used only once each round. Workers have certain powers, but they can only be used by people with low power. To gain victory points, players must complete the order form, build shops and trading houses, clear custom goods, and dedicate the church. At the end of the game, whichever player has more points is the winner.
So if you fancy yourself a merchant, you might want to go prepare some funds to invest in a copy of Yokohama Duel, coming soon from Tasty Minstrel Games. Sean, I have so thoroughly mastered the game of Onitama. I can beat all challengers, I cannot be stopped, even by you, even by death itself. But is there anything left for me to do in this game? I feel like I'm so good at it. I just need something more.
Well, Alex, I don't know, because you haven't yet seen my wind spirit.
Your wind spirit?
Yes, my wind spirit. I have a devastating wind spirit, Alex, that all should avoid.
Because the wind spirit gonna mess you up.
All of the New Mexican food, Alex, gives me a ferocious wind spirit.
Well, I don't think that kind of wind spirit is maybe as useful as you're thinking. The wind spirit that comes, though, in the new expansion for Onitama, Way of the Wind, can add some pretty interesting possibilities. It's an impassable piece on the board that can move using certain of the technique cards. Some of those cards will make it very, very, very tricky. You can't move into it, you can't move onto it, but it can move into you, and if it does, it switches places with your piece, and if it does that, it might put you in a pretty vulnerable position. So Beware of the Wind Spirit in Onitama Way of the Wind, now available from fine retailers from our partners at Arcane Wonders.
Hail and well met, fellow traveler. Where are you going on the King's Road? Are you heading on a road to be the next High Wizard? Or will you be the next king? Or even,
I don't know, just someone playing a game. Hey, it's Call to Adventure.
Call to Adventure is a dice-rolling, adventuring, storytelling game designed by Chris and Johnny O'Neill, art by a bunch of different various artists, and published by Brotherwise Games. Now, in this game, you are basically building a role-playing type character. There's no role-playing, it's a storytelling game. And you are going to, at the beginning of the game, get your origin, your kind of where you began, whether it's as a merchant or a beggar. And you're also going to get your motivation. Maybe you are, you have wanderlust, or you are, or some of the other motivations, Alex.
There's Born Luckies in there. I don't know if that's really a motivation so much, but that's one that you'll see in there. I can't remember them offhand. You only see one of those cards in front of you per game, so.
Well, you see two of them, right?
I mean, you see two and pick one, but you're only dealing with one per game.
Right. And then the third thing you're going to get is your destiny. Now, the first two things are public once you reveal them at the start of the game, but your destiny is secret, and it's something like Born Conqueror or Heir to the Throne. So some greater destiny that your character, in theory, is building up to. In terms of gameplay, it's going to be typically some sort of endgame scoring. Now, as far as winning the game, you're going to, the end of the game, score points for any cards that you've collected that have the white diamond or black diamond victory points on them. Experience points, which are these red diamond plastic pieces, are worth a point each. You're also going to get points from any of the hero or anti-hero cards you've played. And then there's also a set collection aspect of the game where certain cards that you collect are going to have different symbols, and you're trying to collect sets of like symbols, which can give you more and more points as you collect more of them. So the structure of the game is pretty simple. It is trigger the end game by being the first, by being the first player to collect 3 cards under Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And then everyone gets a final turn, and the game is over. So on your turn, you have a choice of acquiring a trait from the available card row or attempting a challenge. And at the start of the game, you're going to lay out 4 to 5 cards for Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 cards, 3 different decks, and they get progressively better and more difficult as the acts progress. But initially, you only have access to the Act 1 cards. And certain cards, as I said, are traits, and what they're going to do is they're going to give you either some sort of, typically some sort of special bump to your traits. So if you're familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, there are the 6 basic traits: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And so your starting motivation and origin will typically give you one trait, 1 point in one of those different traits. And then as you acquire skills, and as you complete challenges, you may be able to add to that as well. So let's say that it's my turn and I decide to acquire a trait that says, hey, have at least 1 intelligence or pay an experience point to get this. And now it just gives you an extra intelligence, for example. So now I have 2 intelligence, which is good, because I'm going to need these extra points when I'm trying to complete challenges. So there's a challenge that I may try. So for example, one is called Lost in the Woods. Now, I choose which path. There's an upper path and a lower path. So for example, Lost in the Woods says, escape your pursuers. That's the top path. And the bottom path is find a place of power. Now, typically for each of these challenges, it's going to let you add to your attempt any points that you have in usually 2 different traits. So for Lost in the Woods, it's checking your dexterity and your wisdom. So what I'll do is I will take the 3 basic runes. So these aren't dice, sort of. They're basically these kind of flat two-sided dice. And on the 3 basic runes, you have 2 of them that are blank on one side and have 1 slash on the other side, which is a success. And then the third one has a success on one side, and then on the other side, a symbol that lets you draw a hero or an anti-hero card. So if I wanted to just try that, I could roll those. And on this particular challenge, if I choose the Escape Your Pursuers, I need a success of 4. If I try to find a place of power, I need a success of 5. So some of them are a little bit different. And I'm obviously not going to do that. So if I happen to have any dexterity or charisma, I get to add in extra runes of those. And what's really cool about the extra runes is that they're 1 success on one side and 2 successes on the other side. So it really is helpful to try and focus on things based on your particular traits. So let's say that I happen to have 1 dexterity, so I'll go and add one of those runes to my roll, and I cast the bones, cast the runes, see what I get. If I have met it, I'm going to collect that card. So for example, if I decided to escape my pursuers, it's going to give me a bonus to my dexterity for future attempts. But if I decide to find a place of power, it's going to give me a bonus to my wisdom, and there's a set collection icon that I'm going to be able to hopefully help score at the end of the game. Now, you can only ever have at most, or at least benefit from, 3 points in a particular trait. And what's really cool is once you reach that 3rd level, you get to roll a special 3rd rune of that trait, which is going to have the success, but then also some special ability, like maybe you roll it and you just get an experience point, or you roll it and you get a new anti-hero or hero card, whatever. So pretty interesting there. And then as you are trying more difficult challenges, or at a certain point fighting adversaries, which are kind of like challenges, except there's no path to them. They're just typically more difficult. Things are going to get a lot harder as you progress, but in theory, the benefits, whether they're through victory points or whatnot, are going to get better. Now, there's also these hero and anti-hero cards, and hero cards generally are helping you as you're attempting a challenge. The anti-hero cards typically get played in response to things happening, sometimes to hurt other players, sometimes as a result of something that you're doing. And what's really interesting is as you play the game, you're going to gain virtue or gain corruption. And it's this track that goes up and down. As you gain virtue, it means that you're going to not be able to play anti-hero cards. But as you gain corruption or go down on this track, you're going to lose the ability to play hero cards. So there's an interesting balance there. And then there's also some endgame scoring points there as well. Now, once the game is completed, once someone has triggered the endgame by, again, having three cards for acts 1, 2, and 3 each, you're going to add up the points, and whoever has the most points is the winner. But the game's not over yet, Alex.
I mean, it's pretty much over.
Well, no, because now you are telling the story of your character. You are, to all of the challenges, all of the traits they've acquired, their origin, their motivation, their destiny is now all together so that you can tell an epic story of this character that you've created. And that is Call to Adventure, a Call to Adventure. You know what, Alex, I got to tell you, this name drives me crazy. I can never remember what this game is called.
It's just Call to Adventure.
I know, but I can't, for some reason, it's just kind of a bland name.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
So
I totally can see that.
With expectations, this was something that I chose because I thought that you would like this quite a bit. We had just reviewed kind of a heavier game of Underwater City. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to give Alex a little break.
Very kind to me. It was very kind. Yeah.
I figured this would be something kind of right in your wheelhouse, something that you'd really enjoy. You like the storytelling. I mean, usually you kind of infuse storytelling into games where that storytelling doesn't exist.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
So what were your expectations going into Call to Adventure?
There was some degree of excitement. I mean, I, as you mentioned, I like this kind of game where you're infusing story and you're telling a story. I like this concept of when the game's over, you're going to tell the epic tale of who this hero you built was and kind of invest yourself and your game actions into that hero. And so I had some decent expectations for what this might be because a very good story can overcome even lackluster gameplay, as we saw with, for instance, Above and Below. Above and Below, to me, the game is okay, but the story is what kept me coming back and enjoying and wanting to be more in that world. So those were my expectations going in, Sean.
Yeah, so for me, I'd heard, good things about this, and I typically like storytelling games. I think this is an interesting kind of overlap for things that both you and I would like. So yeah, I was looking forward to my plays of this, and I guess we'll go from there. So
Yeah.
Alex, did you read the rule book and teach this yourself?
So I was about to do so, having read the rule book ahead of one of the game nights over at Jamie's, and luckily for me, another Alex came in, also brought his copy of it, wanted to play, and taught me. So I think I could have taught it if necessary. It's not a supremely complicated game, but I ended up learning it from then and then taught it later. I have taught this game since then, but yeah, I've had some experience with this rule book, Sean. What about you? Were you learning that one from scratch?
Yeah, and it's kind of similar situation. Yeah, I read the rule book, but then our buddy Nima happened to walk in, and we were getting ready to play this 3 players, and he's like, "Oh, cool! I love this game. I've played it like 4 or 5, 6 times. Do you guys want me to teach?" And we're like, "Sure, why not?" So yeah, he taught it to us. But yeah, it's kind of it's an okay rule book. Yeah, it's an okay rule book, and there's really not much in terms of the gameplay mechanics here. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but it's not that complicated of a game.
It's not that complicated of a game, and yet for some reason the teach on this takes longer than you think it should.
Okay.
Given how simple the mechanics are, it was one of those where the teach went longer than I was expecting. I was like, "Oh yeah, this is an easy game. I can teach this in a few minutes." And 10 minutes later, I was still teaching it, and I still had things to explain. And when people got rolling, it wasn't too bad. But for some reason, the teach on this is, at least in my experience, was longer than I anticipated.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the rule book. I didn't have any severe issues. There were occasions, especially when I was teaching it, where I was like, "Oh yeah, the thing you need to know is in this section of the rule book here." And then I looked, and it took some scanning to find what I was looking for, which is not something you ever want to say about a rule book. Certainly, you can learn the game from the rule book. It's not the worst rule book I've ever seen. It's not riddled with embarrassing typos or anything like that. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's the gold standard of rule books necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Let's see, graphics and art. Sean, to me, I think this game was a pretty big success in large part on the components.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a ton of things. The runes that they use instead of dice are super satisfying. I found those pieces to be really well done. I was skeptical about this because they're basically just dice, but 2-sided dice. Worked out great. They were satisfying to kind of roll around in your hand and then chuck on the table. Kind of throw in the bones, and so I thought that as a component piece worked well. But even little touches like the player board, which had the iconography built in, I found that all pretty well done. Did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, no, I think it's a success there. The dice are great, or the bones that you're casting, right? I mean, it feels very primal in a sense. A very different feel than rolling dice, even though they're essentially just 2-sided die. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, I definitely like that. And the insert that it comes with is pretty good too.
Yeah.
So like all of the runes, all of the bones, or whatever you want to call them, come in this nice little insert that's able to divide pretty much everything really well. There are card holders for the cards, and it survives a shake test. So I shook the heck out of this game, and everything stayed in place. So it's production-wise solid.
I agree with you on the insert being nice. The only thing I experienced was the plastic was maybe a little thin on it in some places.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's one of the better inserts I've seen as far as this kind of a game goes. It kept everything pretty well organized. Here's the thing I'll say. The one component drawback to me, some of the colors on the runes are a little too close together to where it's hard to distinguish at an easy glance whether it's a basic rune or it's a... I think the gray type of one especially was very close. I don't know what skill that's tied to offhand.
Yeah, that's dexterity. So yeah, dexterity is a dark gray, and then the basic runes are black. Or the symbols are black. Also, I think it was I think it's charisma. One of the charisma runes is missing the purple mark on the slash side. And so there were times, and I think I've heard that was kind of a common production issue. And so sometimes you're like, oh, I failed. Oh, wait, no, this is actually a success. You just can't see the purple.
I didn't have that issue with my copy.
Okay.
But that would be annoying. I could see that being very annoying.
Fortunately, Raquel owns like 90 different colors of Sharpies, so I'm pretty sure I can find a matching Sharpie and I'll just deal with it that way. Not a big deal. A little annoying, but not a big deal.
Yeah. And the only issue that comes up with that is because every turn you're grabbing these runes to roll.
Right.
Having those be easily sortable and easily available to folks is pretty useful.
Right, especially because okay, my turn's done. Now it's your turn. Oh, I need to make sure I at least give you the 3 basic dice.
Right.
And now there's also a couple things we missed in the rules overview, but there's also the black runes, which you can pay experience to add these to your roll. And what's nice about it is you're guaranteed 1 success. The flip side is 2 success, but it moves your corruption down. And so that's kind of cool too, because all of the runes are white with the different color markings on them. These ones are black runes with white marking on it. So it looks good.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the art on the cards works really well. They line up nicely when you're tucking them. The iconography works well. Card quality was solid. I like the large size tarot cards.
Right.
It all came together well. I think this was as a whole a win as far as the production goes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a really solid production, and I think it looks good. I think it looks really good. Now, as far as the gameplay, Alex, what did you enjoy the gameplay?
Here's the thing with the gameplay, Sean.
Oh boy.
Your turns will look very, 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 very similar.
Yep.
There is not much variation in your turns. Your turn is either I get this thing or I try and get this thing by rolling runes. There's no gathering resources. There's some choices about which runes you're going to roll and whether you want to throw this in. Maybe you want to play a card. But as a whole, your turn is, I'm going to pick this challenge. I'm going to pick this side of the challenge. I'm going to roll. Did anyone mess with me with anti-hero cards? No? Great. I got it. I didn't get it. Next person's turn.
Mm-hmm.
That's the game.
Yeah.
That's the entire game. And the decisions you're making are which challenge you're going after in the row. Oftentimes it's, do I get more diverse in my skill set? Do I try and beef up in several different skill areas? Or do I try and focus on one that gets me good endgame scoring and ensures that I might be in good shape for challenges? But if I'm only focused on that 1 or 2, I might get into a situation later in the game where I don't have the runes necessary to overcome a challenge.
Right.
So here's the thing. I think this game is going to kind of live or die on the theme, on the character you're building. And I have some significant thoughts on that piece of the equation. As far as a game goes, if there wasn't the character building piece of this, if you stripped away the theme, I think you would have an unbelievably boring experience with this game.
I think you're right in that respect. Similar to, say, a game like Fog of Love.
Hey.
What?
Hey.
Well, think about it. Would Fog of Love be a good mechanical game without the story that you're injecting into it?
Maybe.
Oh, come on. Get out. Come on.
Here's why I say maybe.
False. Totally false.
Because here's the thing, Sean.
Okay, go ahead.
If you strip away that theme, it becomes a 2-player social deduction game. Because you don't know whether someone's trying to do the same goals with you, whether you're trying to win together, whether you're trying to win on different pages. I'm just saying.
Wow. Alex, it's fine to say that Fog of Love is more than the sum of its parts for certain people, such as yourself.
Yes.
But to say that if you stripped away the theme and the story that you and your partner are interjecting into that experience, that it would stand alone on its mechanics, you, sir, are a dirty, dirty liar.
It would be about the same experience as this, maybe.
Sure, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that.
All right, fair. Fine. Were you any more engaged than I was as far as the gameplay, Sean?
It depended on how connected to the character I was. So far, my first character was the most interesting. The next character I made was just this boring vanilla, like stereotypical warrior that I just found incredibly boring. The first character I created was like a Sith Lord by the end, which I was like, oh heck yeah.
You always like evil characters.
Of course I do. And then on my third play, I had kind of an interesting thief character that was kind of interesting, and then he kind of redeemed himself in the end and whatever. And then the fourth character that I made was this merchant who was like chosen by the divine, and so he took it upon himself to try and rid the world of this cult, but he just kept failing and failing and failing. And it was kind of interesting. But none of the characters surpassed that first character that I created in terms of my enjoyment and connection and how interesting the story was in my head.
Okay.
And I will say that this last character I made in the final game wasn't that interesting, but oh man, mechanically was super good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so to me, that's the interesting thing. And that's why I see kind of a Fog of Love comparison is at a certain point, I'm making decisions that are mechanically and gameplay strategic wise sound versus what's going to make the more interesting story or what's going to be more fitting for my character. And I kind of like that small amount of tension, just like I found in Fog of Love.
Here's the thing. Even in my first play of this, where I was into the story, making a lot of thematic jokes and getting into it in the way that I can get into these kinds of games and doing voices and all sorts of those kinds of things. Even in that circumstance, it didn't even occur to me to make a thematic decision.
Really?
It didn't occur to me. Now,
that's bonkers.
Now, how it would work out is that by the end of the game, the character I built, I would forget what their destiny was. Like, I'd remember the scoring vectors and what they were looking for. I'd forget what the destiny was, what they were trying to be. And the actions I took were entirely consistent with that destiny.
Okay.
Unintentionally, not because of anything I was trying to do, but for some reason, and I've seen this happen in a couple of games, the story seems to, the actions you take, whether you're playing mechanically or for story, seem to fit your destiny, which I found to be kind of a cool trick. It wasn't 100% universally true, but when it happened, it just had this kind of cool feeling to it, because it felt like this character was always meant to do this path that they went on.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, there was sort of a cool factor to it, but I didn't find that dilemma of making decisions. I've heard this in other reviews of, well, you can play this game thematically or you can play this game mechanically. Right. And I never once considered playing it thematically.
That's so weird to me.
Yeah. I think I have a way to explain it that's coming up here as we talk about theme, which we've already more than dipped our toe into. But right. Anything interesting in terms of, did you find any of the kind of take that elements to the game that interesting? Was that something that you enjoyed?
Yeah, so they don't come up necessarily. Well, it depends on the game, right? It depends on how many people are going down the darker path to collect the anti-hero cards or not. I mean, at the start of the game, you can play both. And if you kind of hover around the middle, you can choose to play both. But even when they were played, they weren't super punishing. They definitely could be. Like, so for example, some of them might say, oh, you just succeeded on that roll. Here, roll again.
Or roll again with +1 to the challenge.
Right. And so that's, it's not terrible. Because a lot of times you're setting yourself up to succeed on these rolls pretty handily. A lot of times. But it can be devastating. Or it could be, you just failed this roll, I'm going to play this card, and now I get to attempt this challenge. Because otherwise the card just gets discarded, right? But then you also have to skip your turn. So I didn't mind it so much, and I didn't find them super punishing.
What I will say is it can feel punishing when you fail in the early going, because at least in the games I've played, usually the first era is not entirely, but reasonably safe. I mean, you're talking about a pretty high success rate for that, for those Act 1 cards. So anytime you fail, it felt like you were falling way far behind because you're only getting 9 cards over the course of the game.
Right.
So,
but also when you fail, you do get experience points.
Yes.
So, and that's useful for a couple things. Number one, you could always choose to spend an experience point to journey, which means you discard 1 card from the tableau and replace it immediately, which can be helpful if you're not seeing something that you like. Also, certain abilities are powered by experience points, so you spend an experience to get something. Like my last character, chosen by the light, was his motivation. I could spend that as long as I had no black points, no dark points. I could spend that to draw a hero card, which happened to go along with my Hand of Destiny card, or Hand of Fate Destiny card, which was for every hero card or anti-hero card I play at the end of the game, it's worth a point. And when you play them, they're automatically worth a point at the end of the game anyway, so now they're worth 2 points for me. Like, that was a perfect synergy, and I won pretty solid. So yeah, experience points are good, and they're not, other than through failure, they're not easy to come by throughout the course of the game, which is kind of one of my complaints, because there's some mitigation options there. It's also what you spend to get the dark runes to help. So
I found sometimes that when you would get stuck in different alignments, that could be frustrating. When you were stuck in a place where you couldn't play those cards, I would oftentimes find that to be a little bit tricky, especially because oftentimes you would have a handful of worthless cards if you happen to roll on the rune to get, say, a dark card.
Right. So I'm just going back to this idea that the thematic choice was never the choice that you had in mind. And for me, it often was. Like, that was usually my first point of decision making was, will this create a more interesting character for me to tell the story at the end of the game?
There were some plays where that came into factor. So, for instance, I'll give an example of kind of a bang one. Jamie had a character who basically tried to pull off a heist, failed on the previous turn, and then on the following turn picked the get out of jail card under the assumption that his character had been arrested for failing at the heist. And that felt like a thematic choice, even though, again, I think at the time it wasn't necessarily done intentionally. He just happened to have the right runes that fit that choice.
Right.
That's what I mean by that is, oftentimes the game will feel very thematic and you can kind of read a story into it, but the choices you're making oftentimes are, which of these can I roll the most runes for, / which of these get me the most endgame points. That tended to be more of the decision point, was this thing might be interesting. I don't have any runes for it. I don't have any of the characteristics needed to even go for this.
Well, sure. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, that's definitely the case. And so sometimes, depending on the character, I would then make the choice to spend experience to get the dark runes to make it happen.
Okay.
Which may or may not have been the best strategic choice.
But you also like being evil, so...
Well, no, but sometimes I would have to work hard to overcome that.
Sure.
Right? Because for whatever reason. I only had one evil character. Because if you actually max out your virtue at the end of the game, it's worth 8 bonus points. And then I think like the base level's 0. And then as you go down, it's worth like 2 points for being kind of bad, 4 points for being a little bit more bad. But then if you're super bad, it's actually -4 points, I think. So it's interesting how you can be evil, just not super evil.
Right. Don't be too evil.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hear you. Sean, let's talk about theme.
Let's do that.
You found the stories that you built, at least not every time, but at least enough times, satisfying or interesting.
Correct.
Here are some reasons why I didn't get as engaged with the story as maybe you did. You mentioned there being kind of a stereotypical warrior type of character. Mm-hmm. And I would say in a lot of cases, those are the kind of characters that I would see get built.
Sure.
That this person's the mighty conqueror, and they fought all these battles, and they overcame this adversary, and they became the mighty conqueror. The character I played in my first game was a merchant who was born lucky. Mm-hmm. So I just imagined like a rich merchant who then became very studious and studied at an arcane college, and the destiny was to become the high wizard, was to become the king of all magics. And my character definitely played that out thematically. My character tried to become the archmage and failed to do that, and tried to do this and failed to do that. And so by the end of the game, that felt like a cohesive story. But the story was only interesting in some parts because of failure. Part of what I love about, say, Above and Below or Near and Far, and part of what I love about Fog of Love, are the moments of failure, are the moments where the story falls apart, the moments where you make a hilarious decision that you would never actually make in real life. It's part of why I love Tales of Arabian Nights, even though that's barely a game. There's just these wacky moments that come up. This, a beggar approaches you on the street. What do? I seduce him. What? Oh, okay. Well, then this happens. The beggar gives you a strange, quizzical look and then hands you a ham sandwich. Like those kinds of moments of failure, of screwing up, and now your character has a broken leg the rest of the game, or now, your character is sent to this portal, your character's turned into a frog or whatever else. I find those fascinating. In this game, when you fail, discard the card and get an experience point. Did you learn something? Okay, cool. But it's not like you keep the card in front of you. It's not like there's sort of this ongoing story. You might remember it from the game, especially if you're talking about it at the table enough. But that failure, you can imagine or try and throw theme into it, but there's nothing that inherently makes it interesting. There's no creative or interesting punishments for trying something big and failing.
Sure.
And the stories themselves are pretty stereotypically fantasy. There's part of what I love about the game of D&D that we're playing is that there are a lot of characters that don't feel like they fit the mold. We have a cat archaeologist, and we have a half-orc bard who has a sister who's a half-orc cleric. Like, these aren't the typical fantasy stories. It's still fantasy, but also, by the way, there's dinosaurs around. So there's enough twists on that formula. And this just doesn't have that. And it sort of has enough things where you can kind of see what happens, but I just wasn't that interested in the story that was being told, I think, at the end of the day. And I think that's why it didn't hook me the way it's hooked some people. I don't know. I kind of get the idea of the evil decisions can be interesting or fun, and I don't mind making evil decisions. In my game, I played this 2-player with Abby. I was evil all day, every day. I forced her to take this one challenge 3 times in a row until she ultimately failed it. So, I mean, the game didn't hook me thematically because the story wasn't interesting enough, ultimately. And I think if the story's not interesting enough with this game, you're going to have issues.
It's kind of like the saying, only boring people get bored.
Oh, okay.
Well, because you're making the story. You're making the story, right? I mean, and I take your point because, there were certain... You're working with what you've got in front of you. And it's important to... I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just up to you. There's not a lot of game here. And mechanically, it's not like, oh my God, this game is amazing. Like, it definitely lives and dies by how interested you are in this character. And while I'm appreciative of all sorts of wacko, weird, out there fantasy tropes, like even magic, like it started off as very stereotypical D&D fantasy, and then it's expanded into all sorts of other things. But I still like kind of classic fantasy. And so as far as the failures go, you're right. There is no downside other than that you're a little behind maybe if everyone else is progressing, but I still kept the cards because they get discarded and I don't get any benefit from them. But there is a reminder of my failures because I do think, as far as the storytelling aspect, that is interesting.
I think it's important that you do that. I would highly recommend you do that. I didn't do that in my plays, and I wish I had.
Yeah, and the rulebook doesn't tell you to do that. At least I don't recall it doing that. And I think that's kind of interesting because, as you kind of alluded to, the failures are just as interesting or maybe just as important to who you are. Right? To who your character is. But so my first character, and I took a picture of the board at the end of the game, was a sailor. So just a simple sailor, kind of lone wanderer was the motivation. Ultimately, let's see, my destiny was as an intrepid explorer. That was my destiny, right? But I'm this lone wanderer. I kind of keep to myself. I'm the sailor on the ship. We pull into a port, but we're being pursued by this dread pirate fleet. And so the captain alerts the town, the defenses go up, and I get kind of waylaid into helping plan the city's defenses just because I have some familiarity with naval defense and it's a pirate fleet, whatever. And while I'm in the depths of the dungeons of the castle, looking for supplies and things like that, let's see. I learned, why did it rotate? Stupid picture. I started to learn dark secrets. My intelligence is going up. I'm getting these anti-hero cards as a result. And I'm learning to harness dark powers. So just by happenstance, I'm just in the right place at the right time to learn all these dark secrets. Through my help, we're able to repel the invaders. The remaining invaders flee in their fleet. We pursue them. Let's see. Oh yeah, we sink the enemy ship. And I kind of stage a mutiny and take over because I'm using my dark powers. I hide the death of the captain, and I'm now the captain. And I'm learning all sorts of stuff as I gain more and more dark powers, and I decide to test this out against this mighty wizard, but I lose. He beats me. And then I try and take on a demon. I lose. I'm going mad from all of these failures, and ultimately I wind up sacrificing my new crew in an attempt for dark power, and it's the terrible outcome, and it's a failure. And I found that really compelling and interesting for some reason.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think you told an interesting story through that to a degree. So I get you. Maybe maybe I fit the bill of a boring person then. Certainly possible.
Hey, I didn't say it. You said it.
Yeah, fair enough.
I implied it.
You definitely implied it. So
no, I'm. It's just interesting because I really was like, I think Alex is really going to like this game, and I came away from my first couple plays that first night really liking this game. I was a little disheartened when I had kind of a succession of characters that I found less interesting.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the importance of making sure, like this game, like, man, had I rated this after the first two plays, it probably would have been a lot higher than it winds up at. But I still enjoyed the experience. There is an expansion coming out. It's called Name of the Wind, and it's based on a fantasy series, which I don't know a whole lot about. And it was something you could kickstart, but it hasn't been made available to backers yet, and it's not quite clear when it's going to be available in retail. But I think I've probably got, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 more plays of this before I'm going to feel like I've seen all the cards enough times. But I'll definitely be interested in picking up the expansion when it becomes available.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So final thoughts rating. We have guild thoughts.
Yeah.
We have guild thought, I should say. BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, I played Call to Adventure recently. What I experienced is what I thought I'd get out of Roleplayer, a thematic journey centered on the skills, deeds, and development of my fantasy character. Sadly, Roleplayer was more of just a puzzle to me. Call to Adventure might not be as mechanically sound as a game, but when I played, I was less concerned with winning than I was creating this cool backstory for my character. Games that can get you invested in the linear progression of your character rather than the victory points are few but welcome. Not a game I need to own. Well, to be fair, I'm very tempted to own the expansion contents, but a game I will happily play anytime with a group that relishes in the journey, not the destination. I think that's well said.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, this is what I was kind of comparing it to initially in my mind before I even played the first time, was Roleplayer. Because Roleplayer is definitely much more of it's a puzzly dice game where you are building this character. You're not necessarily telling a story. I mean, you kind of can. But Roleplayer is a much more mechanically intensive game and good mechanically, whereas this is obviously much more rooted in theme and storytelling.
Yeah.
So I think the comparison, while it's there initially, I think they're very different games.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that was the comparison I had in my mind in the early going of this. But yeah, I mean, certainly Roleplayer is trying to be a mechanically sound experience. Call to Adventure is trying to be a thematically sound experience. Well, Sean, what does that translate into score-wise? We're at final thoughts and rating. What did this one end up at for you?
So yeah, we rate everything here in the Duchy on a 6-point scale. 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. The upper end, a 6, is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. After my first 2 plays, this probably would have been a 5.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, kind of, well, maybe not surprising, but definitely high. A great game will rarely turn down a play of it. But then again, the characters as I played were less and less interesting. And I think you can't guarantee that you're going to necessarily have a great thematic experience. I think that I did see, like Matt, I thought he was going to like it a lot in my final play, his first play. And there was no mechanical synergy that he could get going, or the right cards weren't coming up for him. And I think that could happen, because you could kind of get to a point where you're just kind of at the mercy of what's coming up. I think that if there were more of a game here, that kind of gets you through the rough thematic characters that you're not that interested in. But there's not a lot of game here. And I think that, like I said, I've got maybe 4 or 5 plays of this, which is still decent, right? Before I'm going to kind of get bored with these cards, and hopefully the expansion will certainly rectify that. So, like Fog of Love, I'm going to give this game a probational 4. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. And I think that we'll see when the expansion comes out. The expansion supposedly adds some additional mechanics. If that adds to the complexity of the game, maybe that's going to help it. So yeah, that's where it is for me, a 4.
Okay.
Alex?
If I didn't already own this game, would I be looking to pick it up? Probably not. I'm between a 3 and a 4 on this one, Sean. 3 being a game is okay, not exciting, we'll play in the right situation. And a 4, good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. I think based on my potential enjoyment in the right play of this, and the fact that this is a key thing, Abby enjoyed this game. And if I can find a game that she enjoys, that's a huge feather in that game's cap. And I think as a result of that, and the result of, I've seen a potential play of this where I can have fun thematic.
Yeah.
It slides into the low end, but on the right side of that to a 4. Kind of in the same place as you are, but maybe a little less enthusiastic somehow. I don't know. A good game worth playing just not all the time belongs in the duchy. I don't anticipate getting rid of the copy. I don't think I'm going to be playing it all the time. But I might seek out an expansion for this and see if that's worth throwing in there and does enough to spruce things up. So I think for that reason, it'll ultimately be a 4, but I was definitely close to a 3. So yeah, I think lower than you probably anticipated I'd end up.
Yeah, I just think you don't like light games, Alex. That's the thing.
That could be. It could be that.
Or thematic games.
I had more fun with Time Pirates than I did this.
Ooh.
And I told more of a story in Time Pirates than I did with this in some occasions. We'll go on a time adventure sometime soon, Sean. Just saying.
Okay.
Anyway, that's the Duke's review of Call to Adventure. Both Dukes giving this one the low end of a 4.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, in our Dukes Double Take this week, we're talking about Gaia Project. This is from episode 173, Infamous, Sean. That's the only way I can describe this duchy moment. It was controversial. It was set up in advance, sort of, but only with one member of the Dukes of Dice knowing. So for folks who didn't go back and listen to this, if you're relatively new to the show, I would call this episode a must listen. Unless you don't like awkward situations. But come on, everyone loves a good awkward situation. What happened with this one was due to a series of events, some of which were out of my control, but most of which were very much in my control. I ended up playing Soccer Tactics World and drinking margaritas instead of getting in my play of Gaia Project.
And Josh, your buddy from Monochromatic Wolf,
yes,
was then he's been in my doghouse ever since.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Because he is much more of a Sean gamer than an Alex gamer.
Right.
And I count on him to keep you in line with me not there.
Yeah, you wanted him to be the adult in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
So I blame him, not you.
Yeah, that's fair.
Josh. Does Josh listen? Does he ever listen? Probably not.
I strongly doubt it. Strongly doubt it. I don't think he will hear this. But
okay.
Yeah, in case he does. Hi, Josh. No, I will say this. What ended up happening proved to be controversial because I didn't tell you I hadn't played the game ahead of the review. And the first time you found out about it was when we got to the section of the review. Yeah. And I think I waited to tell you until after you had gone through the rules.
Yeah, I think so.
And you were in stunned silence, I think is the best way of describing it.
Yeah,
you were some mix of stunned, maybe slightly angry, it seemed.
Yeah, I left all of the stunned silence in. I did not edit that out.
Yeah.
Which was a passive-aggressive move on my part.
That's fair. It was understandable. And it was kind of one of those moments where I misgauged things. I thought it would be a memorable surprise for the Duchy, and it was memorable, and it was a surprise. But there were a lot of people who thought I left you hung out to dry and wondered about the future of the show at the time, and it caused a big existential crisis for the Duchy.
Yeah.
Which, so anyway, go back and listen to that episode. I didn't review this. By the way, Sean, I still haven't played it in the years since. Still haven't gotten around to it. My score for this game is an M for Margarita. Sean, at the time, you gave this one a confusing 4. Confusing because Terra Mystica, which this game is, a reskin of, a kind of an updated version of with a different theme. This is that. And you like this one better. You thought it was a better game, but you gave it a lower score than you gave Terra Mystica. And it was very confusing.
Well, so keep in mind a couple things. So there was a year where Terra Mystica was my number 1 game of all time.
Right.
So it's a 6, right? An all-time favorite that's not only contender for the top 10, but it was my number 1 game of all time.
Yep.
And it hovered on the top 10 for a couple years and then fell off to like top 15 or whatever. And so as I'm playing this, I'm saying, yeah, this is objectively better than Terra Mystica. But for whatever reason, I'm going to give it a lower score. And so this actually caused some controversy of my own on the guild, because people are like, well, I don't understand what's going on. So I'm just going to read a portion of actually what I wrote in response to people. Terra Mystica is not a 6 for me anymore. It's weird to think that my former number 1 game of all time could have possibly fallen to a 4 on the Ducal scale, but I've had almost no desire to get to the table ever since the app came out. I have on occasion turned down plays of it because I knew I could get it played on the app. And there are other top games of mine where I am still happy to play both the digital and the cardboard versions. Both Le Havre and Twilight Struggle come to mind. And just this weekend, as I mentioned on the show, a game like Through the Ages seems to have fallen victim to the app as well. The bottom line is that this is a scale that has objective elements that are ultimately filtered through our subjective feelings. Our ratings reflect how good a game might be, along with how we felt about that game and our willingness to play it in the future. I think Sean from 4 years ago would have given Gaia Project a 6, but for some subjective reason, current Sean could only give it a high 4.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that's kind of my thinking at the time. And I mean, it's a good game. It's a really good game. But it doesn't do it for me anymore. And it's a really interesting game. It's action selection. There's kind of a network building aspect to it, resource management and collection. Like, it's a really solid game. And even though it's only a 4, I still give it a really high recommendation. People need to go check this out because it just might fit better for your taste level than it does for mine right now. But it's weird. It's definitely weird. And I don't know. Like I said, the app has something to do with it, and changing tastes have something to do with it. And so yeah.
Have you played it since?
No, I have not. In fact, I sold it at one of the Gamers Garage sales, pretty much right after the review. It's interesting. I still have Terra Mystica in my collection. I'm not going to play it. I should get rid of it. Oh man, that's so weird. Oh, and part of the problem too with Gaia Project is it looks terrible. Like, the graphic design is terrible. Like, Terra Mystica is beautiful. Like, even though it's the same artist for both, like, which is crazy to me. Like, the art in Terra Mystica works. The way that the races are drawn or illustrated, whatever, works. In a space game, it just doesn't look right. It looks weird. I don't like the graphic design. Like, it's just crazy. I should probably get rid of Terra Mystica.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know.
We had one thought in the guild on this week from Evan Scussel. Evan says, regarding Gaia Project, it took a couple of plays to grok this, but I'm finally starting to see what the fuss is all about. The first 3 rounds, you're setting yourself up for the last 3 rounds where the real fun begins. Your ability to chain actions like spending power, moving up tech tracks, using research, colonizing, etc. really starts to become apparent as the game progresses. This is a pure efficiency optimization puzzle with just enough asymmetry, replayability, and player interaction to make me want to keep coming back for more. An excellent game, and depending on the day, either just in or just out of my top 10, which makes this a 6 on the Ducal scale.
Totally understandable.
So that's the Duke's double take of Gaia Project. I still have not played it. Sean has not played it, and in fact has sold it, but the game remains at a 4. Before we wrap things up for episode 200, Sean, the rest of the top 6.
Let's hear them.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo with Magna, Mater, Margaritas. And the explanation for this one, I think, is necessary to understand it. But BJ is talking about, we scroll to it, an amazing milestone, amazing adventure stories, an amazing drink, and an amazing name for Mother Earth, a.k.a. Gaia. So, Magna, Mater, Margaritas.
And then, okay, so how do we say his name, Alex?
Ossianger.
Ossianger. So real quick, let's just take a quick aside.
You were wrong, Sean. Admit it.
Okay. So apparently, he was on Twitter or was on the Guild where he posted something.
It was on the Guild.
I thought that was on Twitter too. I think it was on Twitter where we were arguing about his name. So a while ago, the first time his name was mentioned, probably like a year ago, you had mispronounced it, and he messaged me and said, "Hey, it sounds just like this word." And I forget what the word was. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's Ossian, Ossian. And I don't know if one of us is just mispronouncing the whatever word it was he gave. Like if one of us thinks it's actually chameleon, not chameleon. You know what I mean? Does that make sense, Alex? Okay. So it's Ossianger. He suggested, who you Gaia call?
I like that.
Who you Gaia call?
I can always think a good Ghostbusters reference. I danced to that song all the time when I was a little kiddo.
Chewie dances to that song in one of the dancing Xbox Connect things.
It's a pretty perfect song for dancing.
Yeah.
Bustin' makes me feel good, Sean.
Sure.
Just saying. Todd Kauk with Call Me Dutchie. Hey, I just met you. This is crazy. Well, here's this episode. So call me Dutchie.
Yes, that works.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's got the call to adventure.
Yep.
In there. Michael Farnbrook suggested 10 score and 5 years ago, kind of tying into the milestone nature of this episode, which we've mostly ignored.
And then Randy Bieri, and this is... I was just entertained by I've never seen an episode title suggestion with this format. CT at GaiaMail.com. And the reference for that, and it makes more sense when you see it written out, I think, than it does when
it's a CC line on an email.
Right, exactly. So CC is the Roman numeral for 200, CT Adventure, aka Call to Adventure, and then Gaia Mail, as in Gmail. Clever, interesting, not the pick, but hey, you're in the top 6. Good job, Randy.
Very good job, Guild. We appreciate it. Well, all right, Alex. When is our 5 year? That's in August. How many episodes do we have?
It's around Gen Con-ish. Yeah, we'll be at like 210 by then. Maybe 208?
206?
I don't know.
We got all of May, June, July, August. Yeah, like 208. So that's when we'll celebrate, Alex. 208. Or 207 or 209.
Or we'll let everyone down again.
No, we do stuff for the Duke-iversaries. Stuff will happen.
Okay.
Alex, do you commit to make stuff happen for our 5th Duke-iversary?
Do you commit to make stuff happen?
Wait, answer the question, Alex. Yes or no?
I'm not going to unilaterally make a pledge here. If you say you will do stuff and actually do stuff, I will do stuff.
Why won't you? So you won't choose to do something?
Nope.
You didn't answer. I'm the one. I'm asking the questions here, Alex.
Cool. I'm not going to answer your question until you jump in because.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. It's not your turn to ask questions.
Hey, that's going to do it for episode 200. Many runes, many moons. The Name Father with yet another episode title suggestion. That's going to do it for this episode. Until next time, this is Alex.
And Sean.
Duke you later, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to The Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on May 2nd, 2019. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, and Game Toppers, LLC. You can check out all of TMG's awesome titles at playtmg.com. Arcane Wonders, find games at arcanewonders.com, and learn more about Game Toppers at gametoppersllc.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!